maybe I even feel shame about being tired or burnout because I should be grateful. And there's other people who would be grateful to have this opportunity that I have, but I'm not.
JB Bolton is the bootstrapped executive who scaled a tech company to $25 million in revenue without ever taking a dollar of venture capital.
My wife and I sold all of our stuff and got an RV and traveled the country.
That's awesome.
That's fun. Yeah.
we did the van life thing, right?
You were saying this person might not be in the right seat. Talk a little bit more about that too, because I feel like that goes right into your coaching as well and all the different fractional things that you're doing.
Sometimes when you're in a career and something feels a little amiss, it could be that you're the right person in the wrong seat. It could be that you're...
Sounds like you're kind of similar to that at BombBomb in a way. I think what they call them are intrapreneurs, not entrepreneurs, but you're kind of sounds like you were kind of an internal entrepreneur at BombBomb.
EOS language, you would call me an integrator. Okay. So you've got a great visionary who has some dreams. Mm-hmm. And then you need some folks to come in and actually make the dreams become a reality.
What do you say to the person at home who they're on the hamster wheel? They feel like they're in survival mode 24/7.
You are not meant to go it alone. And so don't. Human beings believe their value comes from, what you do, what you have, or what other people say about you. And if there's literally a dollar exchange for what you're doing, you start to see.
Welcome back to the COS Business Podcast, #1 podcast in Colorado Springs.
Today, our highlighted sponsor is Pioneer Rodeo. You can find them at pioneerrodeo.com. Check them out.
Yes. And
they have a show coming, right?
Yes, they have an event coming up in mid-August. So check that out. They'll be on right before, so we'll remind you guys before that. But they're also our newest sponsor for the show. So we're super proud to have them. Jay Dial runs that. So we're super excited about that as well. So look for tickets. Pioneerrodeo.com. So today is a very, very special episode. We actually been catching up right before the show with Mr. JB Bolton with Bolton Co. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, it's very rare that we have a Colorado native, someone who has as much experience as you for one, but also again, Colorado native who's built several different types of businesses in this city. But let's just start from the very beginning, man. You're from Colorado Springs, you went to CSCS. Start from the very beginning and what you got into business. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, totally. So this will be a fun story. So I was born at Memorial Hospital downtown. That was the only Memorial Hospital back in the day, and went to school, as you guys mentioned. Colorado Springs Christian School was a great education for me. Freshman year up at CSU, came back down to UCCS and graduated with a degree in communications. And I thought this will be relatable to you all. I thought maybe I was going to go, it was a communications, bachelor's of communications. And I'm like, I'm going to go into radio TV.
Okay.
And then I'm like, oh my gosh, you work terrible hours and you don't make any money. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to do that. And throughout high school and a little bit of college, I worked at the Citadel Mall. I actually met my wife at the Citadel Mall.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Man.
Nice,
right.
okay.
I mean, that's Colorado Springs legit right there to meet and for me growing up, there was not all this online social media and stuff. And so, you kind of, when you were in junior high and high school, the mall was the food court at the mall. That was the place to hang out.
Oh, totally.
I don't think it's the place to hang out anymore.
I don't think so either.
It was tail ending right at when I was getting out of high school.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, totally. So, started working in retail. And that was fine. And then, I had a recommendation to get into financial services, and I did some retail leadership, and that was good. But like I said, you learn, and I had a lot of fun doing it. That was my first, leadership experience, leading retail teams and doing the marketing and folding the clothes just the right way. And, I loved working at the mall during the holidays. There was this vibe, like back then, around, Christmas, it was absolutely nuts. Mm-hmm. And it was really, really fun and energizing. But got into financial services and really, I would say, cut my leadership teeth at a great business that has a huge local presence called T. Rowe Price.
Okay.
And spent some time there doing investment guidance for folks. And that is a really interesting human experience, because when people are talking about their money, they will share some really interesting things, depending on what they're saving or investing their money, for. And so I would go, 10, 20 of these conversations a day, helping people with their investments. And you learn a lot about how humans are setting their goals, why they're setting their goals, why they think they're trying to do that. Retirement, just the mindset of retirement got really disrupted for me. I would talk to folks who would call almost every day so that I could recognize their voice on the phone, worried about how much was in their investment account. I would also talk to folks in tears who had already retired and literally cannot, maybe they lost a loved one, or they're in a place from a physical health standpoint that they can't retire the way that they envision retiring. Man, it really challenged some of my thinking early on. But more than anything, it taught me a tremendous amount about leadership. And I worked for some great leaders and spent about 7.5 years just kind of growing my leadership there.
We're going to take a quick break to thank our sponsors. Reveal Med Spa. Look and feel your best at Reveal Med Spas. With personalized plans that deliver real results, radiant skin, restored confidence, and natural rejuvenation.
At Reveal Med Spa, we see you. More than just aesthetic and wellness treatments, we provide a safe, judgment-free space where you feel valued, heard, and supported.
Visit RevealMedSpas.com.
Book your next session at RevealMedSpas.com. That's RevealMedSpas.com. Home Day.
Buying a home shouldn't be overwhelming. Home Day empowers you to save on your mortgage by putting you in control of the process. Lower your cost and take the next step towards home ownership with ease. Visit gethomeday.com today.
Fast Signs. From banners to vehicle wraps, Fast Signs delivers custom visual solutions to help your business stand out. Their team ensures your message is clear, bold, and effective. Get your signage needed handled at fastsigns.com. That's fastsigns.com. Epic Eyewear. Stylish, affordable, and designed for adventure, Epic Eyewear has the sunglass and eyewear you need to see life more clearly. From the mountains to the beach, protect your eyes with high-quality frames and lenses. Check out their collection at epiceyewear.com. And by the way, Andrew, we do have a special discount, COSBP15, for 15% off, I believe.
Cars Helping Charities. Turn your unused cars into a meaningful contribution with Cars Helping Charities. They make it easy to donate your vehicle to support local causes. One of the local charities that we like to support on behalf of Cars Helping Charities, actually, and part of their sponsorship is Mattersville. And check them out too.
They're awesome. They are a tiny house community for veterans suffering with PTSD. They have a property out in Yoder, Colorado, and then they also have one in Sedalia, Colorado as well.
Donate today and make a difference. Visit carshelpingcharities.org. That's carshelpingcharities.org.
Dream Accounting Solutions.
Take the stress out of managing your books with Dream Accounting Solutions. They provide reliable expert accounting services tailored to small businesses. Simplify your finances at dreamaccountingsolutions.com. That's dreamaccountingsolutions.com.
Exponential Impact. Exponential Impact is driving innovation and entrepreneurial success in Colorado Springs. Supporting startups with mentorship, funding, and community resources, they help businesses grow and thrive. Learn more about their impact at exponentialimpact.com. That's exponentialimpact.com.
And now let's get back to the show.
That's all. By the way, sub note, I interned there once upon a time.
You did?
In 2013.
What'd you do?
I don't remember. I just worked in the IRA RAM. Was it RAM?
Yeah, totally.
I can't believe I remember
it was
that.
Back in the day. Yeah, good work.
Yeah. Were you in that department too?
No, I was in a different department.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I did investment guidance, and then I worked for a team that did kind of large scale error corrections for like huge 401k plans. And that organizational structure with the business locally has changed with T. Rowe Price. But if you get to work for a large, reputable enterprise company earlier in your career, you will learn a ton. You will learn a ton just about, being a professional, showing up, the way that you conduct yourself. And it was a really great experience for me.
I gained a lot of weight there too, because I had a great cafeteria there, by the way. Side note. So
yeah, dude, you know what? Breakfast burritos for me were a problem. Mark knew exactly how I liked my breakfast burrito, and that caused me some trouble as well.
Yeah.
So, but we've got great companies here, locally. I mean, T. Rowe Price would be one. USAA, another great company that I hear a lot of great things about. I know a lot of folks at Compassion International, another large scale nonprofit organization, and I think you have opportunity to learn and see how business is well run. It can be really good for us, I think, early in our career. The challenge is sometimes at an enterprise organization, your career path is really charted for you for years and years. And depending on your personality and your growth, you may find that you need to do a little bit something different. And after our daughter was born, I'm like, man, I need to do something a little bit different here. And that's how I came to, well, the truth is the first thing I did was I took what I jokingly call my first retirement. And before it was cool, my wife and I sold all of our stuff and got an RV and traveled the country.
That's awesome.
That's fun. Yeah.
we did the van life thing, right?
Okay, yeah.
And that's probably for another podcast episode. But in short, I would say I learned that really there's all kinds of ways that you can make money and provide for your family, right? Apart from title, and apart from dollars. And if you're in a place professionally where you can start to kind of disassociate, how much money you need to make and what title you need to have, what sort of possibilities does that open up for you professionally? Like if money wasn't an issue and the title, didn't matter as much, you weren't worried like, oh, this is going to look bad on my resume. Like, what would you do? And I got to tell you guys, the sense of freedom that I had rolling out of that RV trip with my family, I felt like invincible because our family learned to live on way less. I'm like, oh my gosh, we don't need nearly this much money. And before, when I was at T. Rowe Price, I had, a Dwight Schrute title. It was like assistant vice president or something like that, right? and I'm like, man, if I were to cast those things aside, all of a sudden the possibilities open wide up. And so I started talking to my local network, and they're like, who's hiring? And they're like, there's a tech company that you might like, that you might really be able to help out with. And that tech company is still here in Colorado Springs. They're called BombBomb. And BombBomb is a subscription-based software company. They make asynchronous video for video communication, which is easy to say now over a microphone. But 13, 14 years ago when it was getting started, people didn't even have cameras on their cell phones. Right. So literally when the founder was starting the company, you'd walk around with a video recorder and go record the video and then try and figure out a way to email a video. So it was a really interesting business to be a part of. And I had the privilege of being one of the founding members of the executive leadership team at that company and helped to grow it during its award-winning year. So we went from our first, handfuls of customers up to 70,000 customers all over the world, grew that business to, at one point, 135 or so employees, about, 25 million in annual recurring revenue, just to give you a sense of the scale of the business. So really solid mid-sized software as a subscription-based business. And it was a blast. And I loved it. And I learned a ton. What a lot of people don't know, some people will be familiar with the name BombBomb, but one thing that's really interesting about that business is that it's bootstrapped and was never VC funded.
Wow.
And when you build a business like that, it is hard work, really honest hard work, because you don't have the investment to make in the future unless you've earned it, right? And you just learn a tremendous amount about doing business when you grow a company that way. So I got to hold a bunch of different roles, which is really common in a growing company, but ended up being their senior VP of operations, and then their chief customer officer, and then ultimately their chief revenue officer. And when that collaboration came to a close for me, I really was going to rest and take some time to figure out, what am I gonna do next here? And pretty quickly, I had built some great relationships, and some folks started reaching out and saying, "Hey, would you consider doing a consulting? Like, could you help us out with this project or that project?" And so I started doing some of that, and it was fun because there was variety in the work. But then one day I had someone directly message me and say, "Would you consider taking on an executive coaching client?" And I'm like, "What? Let's talk."
Yeah.
And so I jumped on the phone with this woman in Maryland, and she's like, "Here's the situation. I'm a leader at this company. I appreciate your point of view and your experience. This is where I feel like I need some help. Could we do some work together?"
Gosh.
And that was how I got into executive and business coaching, and that's where I spend the bulk of my time doing. I'm a fractional executive too, so every once in a while, which is basically like executive and business coaching embedded, right? So it's like, oh, okay, we need some help in this spot, and we want it more indefinitely. So I do some of that work as well. So
Sounds like you're kind of similar to that at BombBomb in a way. I think what they call them are intrapreneurs, not entrepreneurs, but you're like, kind of sounds like you were kind of an internal entrepreneur at BombBomb in a way. And so like the fractional thing kind of shares upon that experience, I assume, right?
yeah, it totally does. So there are a bunch of different business models that we use. If you're running tech, you're probably familiar with EOS, which is a great one. Scaling up was one that we used at BombBomb. I love that as well. Some of you are familiar with OKRs. There's all kinds of these business operating systems. But if you're familiar in EOS language, you would call me an integrator.
Okay.
So you've got a great visionary who like has some dreams, and then you need some folks to come in and actually make the dreams become a reality. And that tends to be the seat that I'm in. And so yeah, it's a fun seat to be in. The cool thing, I had a mentor explain to me once that when you're growing from a career standpoint, like imagine your career growth kind of on this trajectory, right? And then you've got a company that's growing as well, and it's got a trajectory. And there's a period of time where maybe those lines parallel or they intersect, but sometimes the company's growing faster than you are, and that's okay, right? You're built for a specific stage, and you've got a specific piece of knowledge, and it serves that business really well for a brief period of time. And sometimes the opposite is true. Sometimes you're growing really fast, right? This can happen in the enterprise level. You might be growing really, really quick. Enterprise companies are not growing the way that startup or even mid-sized companies are growing, right? And so you might be growing faster than they are. I was very fortunate in that my growth trajectory and the business's growth trajectory at my tech company ran parallel for 10 years. That's weird. Like almost to the point that recruiters are like, what's the matter with that guy? Now, fortunately, I've got the title, to say, oh, look at the growth here that happened along this growth of this company, but it's very unusual. So I offer that to say, hey, it's okay when a company outgrows you or you outgrow a company. That's all right. That will happen to you multiple times throughout your career. And if you're running a business, it will happen to you with your people as well, because they're growing faster than you are, or you're growing faster than they are. And that's okay. We just need to make sure that while those lines are kind of in parallel or intersecting, that's the sweet spot, right? That's where we got really good teams of people that are performing really well. So
explain, because you're talking about it briefly here, but I think it's really important, but explain EOS, obviously based off the book Traction.
Yep.
Great book, by the way. And I mean, I feel like the more I reread that, and I have clients who use EOS method into what they do in running their meetings, L10 meetings, all these different kind of vernaculars that are specific from that book. Great book. Explain it to the folks at home who don't quite understand what that whole operating system means to the growth of a business.
Yeah, great question. Okay, so they can do it better than I can, but in short, most businesses fail because folks that start the business don't get in business to run a business. They get into it because of what they're passionate about or their vision for the future. And so if you fail to professionalize your business, you're going to stall out, right? And so what you need to do is build the team and the operating system that can run the business part of the business. So there's all kinds of metaphors that we can use. I love using the one of an airplane, where it's like, okay, you got sales and marketing as the engines. Maybe you've got your product suite as the wings. You've got kind of the overhead as literally the cabin in the airplane. You've got your leadership sitting in the cockpit, right? And what happens is if those things don't grow at the right rate, the plane doesn't get off the ground, right? One engine's bigger than the other. Maybe the products and services can't float you. Maybe you got too much overhead, right? We got to dump some bags out or whatever the case may be. And so there are a number of operating systems that you can use to run your business. And EOS is one of the great ones. There are a lot of great companies that use that operating system to build a cadence for communication, to hold people accountable, to provide great visibility into what's being done, what success looks like, what's the mission and vision of the organization, how are we going to get there. You really do need to professionalize your business to be able to hit the next level. And so when a business is stalled, most of the time it's because something's a little bit out of balance there. Sometimes there are some process problems. Many times there are people problems that sit in front of those process problems. And you got to solve those to be able to hit another gear. That's one of the things that I like about EOS. One of the companies that I fractional for, I'm a fractional chief revenue officer for Chris Lindahl. He's basically runs one of the top independent real estate companies in the US. He's out of Minneapolis. Our EOS integrator is Mike Payton, who was the integrator behind Gino at EOS. So when I get to, I used to not like L10s until I sat in one of Mike Payton's L10s and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's how it's supposed to look.
It's the same thing for me. Like once you see someone who really knows how to run an L10 meeting, and for folks at home, that's just the format of the meeting. It's a freaking beautiful way because there's collaboration all across the table from everybody. And again, like I don't want to get too nerdy about it, but it's really interesting because then you put people on their rocks, which is essentially like quarterly goals for them. And then you go across the table and say like, are you on track, off track? And like all these different things are held accountable on a weekly basis, depending on how they run the meeting. And just keeps everybody in check of what's going on and transparency there as well. And it just pushes so much. And one thing that you didn't mention that I want to bring up too, to kind of finalize what we're talking about with traction was seats. You're saying like this person might not be in the right seat for this specific moment or this specific position. Talk a little bit more about that too, because I feel like that goes right into like your coaching as well and all the different fractional things that you're doing as well.
Yeah, totally. So you're talking about right person, right seat.
Yeah.
There are, when you feel friction in your role, there are some great questions to be asking yourself, or if you're observing friction to be asking about the people in those seats, right? Is this just a seasonal one-off? Do I have a body of evidence here that this person's, really high performing and we just happen to hit a, challenging season? That happens. I mean, that's a very human thing, right? But, does this person actually understand it? Do they have the competency to do this? Is it something they want to be doing? Right? Do I have the right team assembled around me? So I take a little bit of a different approach on this. When I'm doing career coaching, I tend to look at what's your unique design? How are you wired? Right? And I like to use validated psychometric assessments to do that. You can take all kinds of personality, assessments, but your house at Hogwarts may or may not definitively dictate your career path, right? So I like to use validated psychometric assessments. There are several great ones out there. Predictive Index, I use ProD quite a bit. DISC is a really good one. Myers-Briggs, there's a bunch, and you can use them, together. You can put those together to look at kind of unique design. But then I also want to know what values and passions look like for you. And I think as human beings, you find the intersection of those things. It's going to give you some really important clues about career trajectory and career path. And so sometimes when you're in a career and something feels a little amiss, it could be that you're the right person in the wrong seat. It could be that you're the wrong person in the right seat. Right? It could be some combination of both. You're the wrong person in the wrong seat. Does not have as much to do with you and your identity and your value as it does the role. So when things are out of alignment, that's okay. That's going to happen to you in your career multiple times. And if you run a business, it's going to happen with the team that you work. And that's okay. It feels very threatening because we tend to tie significant many times, frankly, especially here in the US, we come to conclusions about our value or identity based on our work, on our job, right? And so it feels very threatening when those things like, what do you mean I'm the wrong person in the wrong seat? Like that feels really, really dangerous, right? But what we're talking about is just the role, not talking about you as a human. You as a human are invaluable. You have unique, intrinsic value. And you might just be underappreciated and grinding too hard in this role. The role might not be serving you, and you might not be serving it. That's okay. That's going to happen multiple times. So the job, the critical role that we take as leaders is, hey, what is this? What are the outcomes that we're looking for here? What are the competencies that yield those kinds of outcomes? And getting, building teams, building A-player teams is tough duty for any business. Doesn't matter how big you are. Assembling the right diverse talent pool that you need to be ultimately successful is really critical. And that's an area where I spend a lot of time helping teams figure out how to do that well.
That's where your passion is?
Oh, big time.
I could have
Yeah, big time.
And before we go, that
wide angle shut off. We interrupt this broadcast for a wide angle shut off.
We'd like to take a quick break and thank our sponsors.
Pioneer Rodeo.
The Pioneer Rodeo is back August 15th through the 17th at Norris Penrose Event Center with 2 nights of rodeo and wild demolition derby finales.
Tickets go on sale June 1st. Details at pioneerrodeo.com. Bolton Co. Executive Coaching. Up feels better than stuck. You know that. But in this market, how do you get unstuck and get ahead as an executive?
Our guy, JB, is an executive coach at Bolton Co. Coaching, where he believes you don't have to change who you are. You just need an injection of effectiveness and a proven competitive edge roadmap for your way up. Head to boltonco.net. That's boltonco.net. ProLift Garage Doors. ProLift Garage Doors are your locally owned and operated residential and commercial garage door experts. From fast repairs and smooth replacements to routine tune-ups, they keep your doors running like new.
Go with the pros at ProLift Garage Doors.
Visit proliftdoors.com to learn more. Be Our Guest Getaways. Be Our Guest Getaways specializes in Disney cruise resort and theme park vacations.
Planning a Disney vacation can be stressful. Let Be Our Guest Getaways provide you with concierge-level service for free.
Learn more at beourguestgetaways.com. That's beourguestgetaways.com.
Planet Duct. Planet Duct is the #1 choice for professional air duct cleaning in Colorado Springs and Southern Colorado. With state-of-the-art equipment and top-tier service, they make sure the air in your home or business is clean and allergen-free. Breathe easier with Planet Duct. Learn more at planetduct.com.
Awesome Home Services. Awesome Home Services delivers top-notch HVAC solutions for your home. Whether you need heating, cooling, or system maintenance, they ensure your comfort year-round. Visit awesomeservice.com for your HVAC needs. That's awesomeservice.com.
Proud American Electrical and Solar.
Give Proud American Electrical and Solar a call today for all your electrical and solar needs. They are locally owned and operated business right here in Colorado Springs. If you're looking for information on solar, this is the company you will want to call. Check out their website at proudamericανsolar.com. Use promo code COSBusiness for a 5% discount today.
Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care.
Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care offers affordable, accessible healthcare with a focus on you. They provide exceptional primary care without the hassle of insurance barriers. Experience a patient-centered approach. Learn more at pinnacleapc.com.
And now let's get back to the show. I love a lot of the things you've been saying, for sure, with all the things you bring to the table. It obviously has to do with your experience. And what we've seen a lot, especially locally here in the Springs, is like everybody seemingly so can be a coach, right? And like you see one every we were just talking about before we started this of like, hey, you go to a networking meeting, it's like insurance broker, or there's a, there's another coach everywhere. So talk about, breaking down that kind of cultural narrative of like coaches and what you bring to the table. Obviously, the corporate experience and growing a business to such heights.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, boy, the coaching. Listen, you hit the nail on the head. Anyone can say they're a coach. Anyone can say they're a coach. So it's crazy. I mean, it is crazy out there. If you've been to a local networking event, we were joking about this earlier. It's highly likely that you just met 2 or 3 new coaches and maybe 2 or 3 new financial advisors, right?
Yeah.
So it's really, really common. And you see all kinds of coaches out there. And I think there's some really amazing coaches. And you know this when you're reading books and you find out, these folks that are at the top of their professional careers,
Totally.
right, have amazing coaches behind them, and they make these investments. And I view it as, what sort of team do you assemble around yourself to be successful, right? You might have therapists, doctors, maybe you're a chiropractor. You've got, maybe you have some accountability. You're going to invest in some education. Maybe you have a coach as well, right? And thinking about kind of building a team to help you, get to the next level. Coaching can be amazing. I think the etymology of coaching is kind of interesting. Did you know that the word coach, do you know where it comes from?
Mm-mm.
Have you ever heard this before?
Uh-uh.
It literally comes from stagecoach.
I was thinking that.
That's literally where it comes from. The concept is transporting you from where you are to where you want to go.
Yeah. I love etymology so much.
Yeah,
too.
totally. I mean, isn't that interesting?
Mhm.
And it's really humbling. It's like, okay, think about the best coaches. Like, think even, if you're watching, playoff sports, right? Think about the best coaches that you know. And their role is literally to help transport, that team or that group of people, that business or that individual from where they are to where they want to be. And so when it comes to coaches, you need to select somebody that's going to help you get from where you are to where you want to be. And the downside of it is how kind of oversaturated the market is
Totally.
with coaches, right? The plus side is, as these coaches gain experience and expertise, they start to niche in and they do some crazy stuff. So I know, tons of coaches. So there's highly likely, if you've got a specialized skill set you're looking for, I know somebody. So I remember, a few weeks ago, I was in a meeting, and one of the coaches I was with is a breath coach, which I've heard before. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I don't know what that is. A breath coach for golfers.
No
Okay.
joke.
That's literally what this coach does. And I'm like, holy smokes, that's amazing. So it depends on where you are and where you're trying to go.
Totally.
And finding a coach that's right for that person. So you're going to find all kinds of coaches. Some coaches are really good because they have lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
Some coaches are really good because they're credentialed by reputable governing, bodies. ICF is one of my favorites. I, by the way, am not ICF certified, but I've worked with a bunch of coaches who are, and I think they do a fantastic job. And there's all kinds of different coaching methodologies. Some coaches think that to be a really good coach, you just ask questions. You just ask questions. The reason that you do that is because you want to lead human beings to come to their own powerful conclusions and breakthroughs, right? And it's a really powerful approach. Takes some time, takes some patience, but the conclusions that these professionals will come to through powerful questioning is really unique. What's interesting is when you're watching the playoff team, that coach isn't standing on the sideline asking a bunch of questions, are they?
No.
They are not. They are not like, well, how do you feel about this? Tell me more about that. They're not. What are they doing? They're highly directed.
Yeah.
Right?
Giving commands and stuff.
They are. They're highly directed. Now, what you don't get to see is what they're doing off camera, where they are asking questions and they're inviting people to engage and think about it. And what we call that, I think professionally, is we call it situational leadership. There are times, depending on your level of competency and your level of motivation, where I as a coach need to adjust how much direction I'm providing and how much support I'm providing. If you are highly motivated and not very competent, all I need to do is say, Marcus, I'm so glad you're here. Here's what I need you to do. Boom, boom, boom. And you're like, yeah. And you go for it, right? But if you're not super motivated, maybe you're feeling stressed or maybe you're not feeling super confident, but you have some competency. My approach as a coach and as a leader needs to be entirely different, right? So there are a bunch of different coaches who have different styles, right? If you're looking for a coach at the enterprise level to improve your physical manufacturing line on the floor. I'm not your guy. But if you're running a small or medium-sized business in Colorado Springs and you want to know how to grow and scale that, you might be more interested in talking to me. If it's a tech or software company, you might be even more interested in talking to me. So I think you just need to do some research on who this coach is. What is their lived experience? If they're credentialed, what sort of credentials do they carry, and what does that matter to you in terms of helping you accomplish? But there is one credential that I think matters more than any other, and it's results. It matters more than anything else. I've known some richly credentialed and educated coaches who do not have great results experience. I also know some incredible business minds who are terrible coaches. But the proof is in the pudding always. And just ask and look for what the results are. If you can't find any social proof, if you can't find testimonials, if your coach can't introduce you to another business or another person that they've helped move from A to B, I think you should go have a conversation with a couple more coaches. I think it will really serve you well.
Yeah, great point. I wanted to turn it a little bit around on you though, because I know you've had, to be a great coach, you've probably been coached yourself, obviously. Talk a little bit more about your career the past 20 years in leadership and the coaches that have helped you along the way in different stages of your career as well.
Yeah, totally. First of all, you're right. I have had great coaches and I continue to have great coaches. So, and I think each there's not one coach necessarily that will walk you through every season and scenario, but there are right coaches for different seasons and scenarios. And man, I am fortunate. I think some great mentors. Mm-hmm. I think some leaders that care about the human aspect as much as they care about the results of the business. I think different kinds of leaders that operate in different ways have been really, really, they're striking to me because they operate so differently than I do, and it catches my attention, right? I get really curious about that. I'm like, how are they achieving that, doing it that way? And you start to get really curious, and you gentlemen get to interview all these people and hear their amazing stories, right? Which I think is incredible. So I was fortunate to have to grow up with a great family, and so my first great coaches were my parents, right? And then I have a lot of gratitude, for them. I still pretty regularly meet with my dad. I tell him he's on my board of advisors,
Nice.
right? Awesome. And he's still in great health and way smarter than I am. And so we'll sit down, on the regular. And I'm, Dad, I need some advice on this. Give me your perspective on this thing. And so that's been incredible. And I think there are several leaders that come to my mind. During my time at BombBomb, I worked for a couple leaders, Valdra and Phil, who taught me a lot. At BombBomb, had great leaders that really became dear friends. Darren, the president of the company, Ethan Butte, who is our chief marketing officer. He's the chief evangelist at Follow Up Boss, who under Zillow right now is a great leader as well. Just these people who challenge and question and can walk alongside you and show you a path or a different way to think about something as you've been there. And today, I have a coach who I love. His name's Rick Sham. He's got more gray hair, and when I say gray hair, I mean wisdom and experience. Right? He's got decades on me. And he's, when we're working with assessments, I will pull him in occasionally for an executive debrief on an assessment because he's seen so many of them that he can read your mail. And my clients are like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
That's crazy.
Because he's seen so many of these, he'll pull in and be like, hey, let's talk through this a little bit. And it's just so humbling to sit back and watch these leaders, navigate. So, I read some books, as I'm sure you all do, as well, and follow other leaders. I always think kind of the great tell for a really good coach, similar to results, a really good mentor. What is the fruit around them look like? And is that the kind of fruit you're interested in bearing? Right? Is it financial success? Is it relational success? Do you see health? Do you see a lifestyle that reflects is it philanthropy? How are they giving to their community? What sort of people are they attracting and retaining around them? I think those are really good indicators about who good mentors and coaches can be for us. So,
and people just to be around in general. I think,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting too, because I 100% agree with what you're saying, but it's also interesting because I also think on the flip side of things, like to be coached, you have to make yourself available to receive coaching as well, which is, it's kind of an ego push, right? Because like at first, I mean, especially when you're younger, you might think you have some level of confidence and skills that, you know, it's sometimes harder to receive that type of coaching. So talk about that too, like the flip side of that, and like opening yourself up to receiving that type of coaching for young entrepreneurs who are just trying to build, you know, their life, but they also have to be, you know, it's kind of hard to have those growing pains and have someone just say like, hey, you know, have you looked at this? Have you looked at that? And get pushed and get challenged.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, coaching is always going to be easier if you ask for it than if it comes to you uninvited.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
You're going to be way more interested in listening to it if you ask for it than and you know, sometimes we don't have the luxury of deciding which is going to happen when, but you always have direct impact on being able to ask for it, right? Being able to ask for growth. And so I think applying, you know, for me, you're totally right, dude. That when I'm setting up for one-on-ones, you know, with an executive team, I'm like, you need to come ready for your one-on-one. It's not my job to come to you with a presentation. You need to care more about your growth, your happiness, your success, your goals, your why, your outcomes than I do. If you don't care more about this than I do, then we have a serious problem.
Totally.
Right. And so we do have to take ownership of our I'm going to pick the word happiness, right? I think career is part of that. But we need to take ownership of how we want to engage this life that we have been given. And I think if you're willing to do that, and if you can be compassionately curious about where you're at and why you're there, right? We are so self-critical, you guys. We are so many leaders at all levels, at levels that you would look from the outside and be like, they are successful. I meet with these individuals and they are so self-critical, and sometimes they're very unhappy. Right. And we get to read headlines, unfortunately, about how these people that we perceive to be really, really successful end up with outcomes that we just didn't see coming or we can't fathom. And we're really self-critical. And I think if you can apply some compassionate curiosity to your own journey and your own happiness, and then start to ask, like, well, what might it look like to get a little bit better? Like, not crazy better, just the next right step. What does it look like to get a little bit better? And start asking around and you know, ask for people that are yielding the kinds of fruit that maybe would be directionally where you want to go. And you're going to start to learn some things. Just get compassionately curious about where you're at. Are you interested in being a little bit more successful? Cool. How do you define success? Interesting. Why? Is that true? What about your happiness? What about your health and well-being? What about your impact, your legacy, and your future? What about you know, the causes that you care about, your values and your passions, right? How are you doing? Right? How are you doing? And I think if you can get compassionately curious in those spaces and start asking, you're going to find there is more to unlock. I promise you that. There's more to unlock in your career and in your life and in your relationships and in your success and in your happiness. And part of that human experience is just taking steps closer and closer to being more truly yourself, and honoring the way that you're uniquely wired and your values and your passions. And I think when we take those steps in that direction, we unlock some interesting energy, some interesting potential, and we have some fun doing it as well. So you're right. I do think that you have to care more about your growth than the person that is coaching or mentoring or leading you. And frankly, look, I hate to tell you this, but you're going to find yourself in a situation where the leader that you report to doesn't care at all about your growth. Like that happens sometimes. That's okay. It may not totally be on their charter to own that. It's your life. You don't have any control over whether or not that leader cares about your growth. You do have control over how you respond to it. So what do you want to do about it? What could you do about it? Are there other people that maybe you could learn or grow from? Is there something you could be reading or listening to? Or would it be helpful just to go talk to a trusted colleague or advisor on that, to try and unlock some paths to growth? So my buddy Kyle owns Platt Furniture here locally, and a super good dude, and he and I meet pretty regularly and talk
awesome.
about the power of just compassionate curiosity for the world around us, but also for your own heart, your own mind, your own well-being. And I think I wish more human beings had the ability to look with compassionate curiosity inward, to find an appetite, to receive some feedback, or to make a pivot, or to grow.
Yeah, great point. Walk us through a moment like during your career where, obviously this is all earned wisdom that you're bestowing upon us, but JB wasn't always like this. JB had to build himself up to this point. Walk us through some moments in your career where you couldn't help you needed something else externally to help you, whether that be a coach or a good mentor or a good colleague.
Yeah.
Walk us through a moment in your career where you needed the help.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I still find myself in them, and I'm still growing and learning. I think that's a really humbling part about the aging process, is gaining that experience and realizing, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know, right? And I think there's several kind of, oh my gosh, there's so many. It's interesting to pick one. I think, one that feels really relatable to me, I'll draw from my time working in financial services for a large enterprise company. And it is this sense, and I think it's a really common sense, that'll hit us pretty hard in our 20s and 30s, that we are made for more, capable of more. Why can't the world just see it? And why am I not there and achieving it? I expected myself to be at a different place at this age than I am now. Have you ever heard anyone, be it yourself or someone around you, that has shared that sentiment?
Oh, 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that was me. That was me as well. I'm like, man, I feel like I've got more gas in the tank here. And and it's not being received the way that I would imagine it would be received. And I was in leadership at the time, and I was doing some great things and getting some good results, and probably doing them a little unconventionally. And I had a leader at the time. His name is Jesse. He was a certified financial planner, so he was kind of a guru at the time. And he pulled me aside and he said, JB, one of the tough things about working in the investment world for a conservative investment company is the whole business and the culture is built around mitigating risk. And you, sir, are a very good measured risk taker. And so what comes naturally to you to bring a new idea or a new perspective in a different way inside of a meeting may not be received in the same way at a business like this one as it would be in another space. And I got to tell you that this gentleman was first of all, I did not report to him. So his ability to pull me out of a room to the side just because he saw something and cared about providing a little bit of wisdom was like, I'm like really paying attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody thought to bring this to bear, but he presented it in such a thoughtful way that I could hear it in that moment. And I'm like, oh, of course. I'm a risk taker in a business whose reputation has been built on mitigating risk. And I'm not a crazy risk taker. Like, I mean, actually, a lot of people would view me as being, relatively conservative. But I can tell you that when I moved into software and tech, bringing that kind of energy or that unconventional thinking or being willing to move a little bit faster or take a carefully calculated risk was more celebrated, right, in that culture and in that business than it was in a different business as well. So I think that just pay attention when you get stuck. Pay attention when you get stuck. When you get stuck, get really compassionately curious, right? Think about a time that you were stuck or that have been stuck professionally. Do you have something in mind, like a moment you were stuck?
Well, many times.
Okay. So think about a specific moment that you were stuck. What kept you stuck?
I felt like I was isolated to understanding the answer to the question I was asking. So whether that was, like, for instance, having the right people in my leadership team that are aligned to accomplish the long-term visions of the company.
Yep.
You feel stuck because you're tied together with these people.
Yep.
And seemingly so, it seems like no answers to that question that I'm asking myself constantly.
Yep. Yeah, totally. Okay. So confidence and clarity, right? Kind of not having having a perspective that is maybe a little bit isolated just because of what you're around all the time and who you know, right? And so clarity is a big one. I think confidence and clarity are a big one. How about you? Is there a moment where
I would feel burnt out, or just wanting to just not wanting to do the things that I used to want to do.
Yeah, something's wrong about the energy, right? Like I'm tired and I don't know why. In fact, maybe I even feel shame about being tired or burnout because I should be grateful, and there's other people who would be grateful to have this opportunity that I have, but I'm not, and I can't figure it out, right? Fear is a really common one. I got to pay the bills. I literally have to pay the bills. So fear will keep people stuck. A lack of confidence and clarity will keep people stuck, right? That sense of being capable of more and not knowing how to reach it. What's interesting is when you talk to people about a moment they've been stuck, first of all, they all have one. And when you ask them what has kept them there, their answers are so relatable. I was working with a group yesterday and we were talking about, think about a time when you're stuck and what kept you there. And as everyone shared, everyone else in the room is nodding. Why? Because I know that feeling. I've been there. I've had even moments of that, or I've had bits and pieces of that. If it's so relatable and we've all been there, why aren't we talking about it more?
Right.
Why aren't we moving forward with that? What is it that keeps us locked away in these places? Right. And I think a lot of that, gentlemen, has to do with our perception of our own value and our own identity. I think that's a big, big piece of it. And what's really interesting about work in developed countries is that human beings will come to really, I'm going to argue, potentially dangerous conclusions about their value and their identity based on their work. Because from whatever age you started getting paid, there's literally a dollar exchange for what you're doing, right? And human beings believe their value comes from, what you do, what you have, or what other people say about you, right? And if there's literally a dollar exchange for what you're doing, you start to say, this is my worth, this is my worth, this is my worth. And then it gets reinforced every time you get paid and every time you get promoted or every time you get fired. And you start to come to some really dangerous conclusions about your value, I think, that need to be disrupted. But if you're like, man, I'm worth this much. I think potentially I could be worth this much, but I'm not sure I'm really worth that much. You're completely mistaken. The role is worth that much in a business. Your value as a human being, that's immeasurable. And if you can't disassociate your value as a human being from the role that you sit at in a business, you're going to start to get stuck. Same thing happens with your identity. What do you do? Your identity is assigned to you in a title that you put on LinkedIn or on Facebook, right? A title that you gotta, parade around at your networking event, or, and I know we're supposed to be so much smarter than this. And so now we say, what are you up to? Or what are you into these days? Or what's, we try not to ask people what they do anymore, but you're still always curious, like, so what do you, but so anyway, so what do you do? Like, it's going to come up at some point.
Totally.
And so, I just think that it's really powerful if you can do the hard work of disassociating your value and your identity from how much you get paid and what your title is. And I think those things keep people really stuck. And they're stuck because they get conditioned and reinforced over and over and over and over and over and over again. And you start to come to some self-limiting beliefs about your value and your identity that I believe need to be disrupted for you to be able to hit another gear and hit the next level. Great
point. Do you feel like that gets disrupted perhaps when you have kids, or when you get married, or being a really good friend, or, sibling, son, all those different things that are tied to identity as well?
You already know the answer to this question, don't you? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we go through all these really unique human experiences, I think, that really shake our our priorities, right? How we're spending our time and our energy, right? We're not guaranteed tomorrow, but we're still expected to plan for the future. How do you balance all of that? What matters to you? How are you going to invest your time and energy? What sort of legacy do you want to live? What's really interesting is that sometimes I have to spend a lot of time with clients who you would look at and perceive to be successful. I have to spend a lot of time walking them through what they want. They cannot articulate what they want. They don't know what they want because what they want has been told to them or shown to them, or they've never been in a place to have actually the freedom to consider what they want. Right. And they might even shut themselves down immediately in the, as soon as you ask the question. Well, like, yeah, JB, really neat, man, but I have a situation I have to take care of that you don't even know about and can't even relate to. So it's almost insulting for you to ask me what I want because I can't even think about that right now. Right? That feels like way outside of reach. And it is fascinating to be able to walk alongside of other human beings and say, hey, let's take a minute to explore a little bit about what you want. And this is where values and passions come into play. This is this intersection between, your unique wiring or design, your values and your passions. And that takes a minute to explore that. Most of the people that I work with, and I would even count myself included in this, really struggle to identify that. It's a great place to exercise some compassionate curiosity. What do you want? What do you want? Why do you want it that way? Are you sure that's what you want? Let's imagine that you have it. What's changed? Explain to me your life. What's different?
I did an experiment like that actually just a couple of weeks ago. I imagined if I magically won $200,000 tomorrow, what would I do? I actually probably still would go to work the next day. I still would do the things in a lot of ways. It'd be interesting. I tried to really put myself in that feeling too. Like I was writing, going deep into it. It was like, I started okay, I would do this. I'd definitely pay off my debt first. I'd do this over here. And then I tried to go through it and it's I don't think it changes that much actually. Yep. But I don't know. I haven't won $200,000 yet.
Yeah. Yep. Dude, I love it. It's such a beautiful exercise to kind of go through that process. Like, what's changed? Okay. How do you feel about what's changed? Does it give you some more clues in terms of what you want? And listen, this is ongoing. It is not a binary answer that you're going to have tomorrow and be like, oh, that's it. That's what I want. Because it will evolve. It will absolutely evolve as you gain more experience and your relationships and your work and your situation changes. It will evolve. So just be open-minded to that evolution and the growth of that. But I think it's really important to ask, what do you want? I many times joke and say, I think you need to retire right now. I think you need to retire right now. What I mean is, trust me, I spent 7.5 years talking to people about their retirement and helping them plan for it. People before retirement, people after retirement. People who were so worried about the future, they forgot to live in the moment, right? People who were in the future regretting that, they're not at a state, that they were back when they were, so man, it is so hard to know how to balance all of those things. But just play out, what do you want in retirement? Dream for a minute. What do you want? Who are you spending your time with? What are you doing for fun? How are you spending your money? Then my question is going to be, are there elements of that you could pull forward into your life right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to invent and build stuff, so I've been inventing and building stuff. So yeah,
perfect, right? So you're like, man, okay, if I'm retired, this is what this is what I would do. Are there ways that I can pull that forward into my life? Those are great clues, by the way, into your unique design, your values, and your passions. Pull those forward. You're not going to regret it. You are not going to regret finding creative and sustainable ways to pull some of what you want in retirement forward a little bit. I think you'll be really, really happy that you did. I've talked to a lot of folks who are making big changes in their lives to pull some of those things forward so that they're spending their time and their energy the right way.
It's so important. I mean, there's often times in my younger career where I was forced to do things because of family emergencies or being a caregiver for my grandfather. And at the time, it could even arose some resentment for being like, why can't I just focus on my career? Why do I have to take care of family? So glad I did it. One of the best moments of my life is to be still and to have conversations, say with my grandfather, caregiving for him for years, with my mom, and getting those moments with them. Like the stories I learned, like getting that time with him personally. I loved it. And I'm so blessed to even have had that in retrospect, right? And so like I found through that I need that part of my life, whether it's having my mom live with us as she gets older, or finding a spot in Florida that's a little bit warmer as she gets older, like that's very important to me. And like I've walked through this steps with myself many times of like, if I had everything, what would be the most important? It's like have my mom, like my board of directors, there every day to be with me and with my family and my kids and all the different things that, come with my future. It was kind of forced upon me. I didn't have to like think really deep because it got forced. And then I'm like, man, this makes me really happy. Yeah. This does make me really, really happy to be there with them.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful. There is a great body of research on as human beings come to the conclusion of their lives, what they prioritize, what's important to them. In fact, sometimes if I have folks that are thinking about coaching, or maybe they're wondering if coaching would be a better fit than maybe therapy or counseling, we kind of go through a wellness assessment and we look at this battery of different, like, hey, how would you rate these things in terms of how important they are to you? And then I don't tell them this before I give them the assessment. They go all the way through and score all these things. Then I say, what do you want them to be? And they go through and rescore, and they're like, oh, well, I want them all to be 10. And then they're like, actually, maybe not. Maybe I want this one to be a little bit higher than that one, and that one to be a little bit higher. But it wouldn't surprise you to know that a lot of those have to do with relationship. Relationships are a big part, right? Hobbies and interests. Safety is a really big thing. And so that is beautiful that, the world through no fault or control of your own served you these experiences that at the time you didn't even realize how sweet they were. And then maybe you start to come to realizing how sweet they are as you're in that moment. And then all of a sudden you don't have that opportunity anymore. And it changes the way that you think about all of those relationships around you and those investments you want to make moving forward, the way you spend your career, the kind of impact and legacy you want to live. I think that's amazing. The other thing you can do is talk to people about what they've learned, about what they want, about how they're prioritizing their time and energy. You can read books. right? You can read books from people that you view as successful, right? In the tech space, you think about people like Steve Jobs, right? Or Elon Musk or whatever the case. I mean, there's so many great books that you can read. And you get to come to your own conclusions about whether or not that's what success looks like. And which parts of it, what of that fruit do you want to take for you? And which parts of it were you like, no, I would leave that behind.
Totally.
That's not, I don't want that to be part of my story. And so, but I do think you have to be intentional about engaging it. And I think you've got to sit down and spend some time thinking about what you want. I think this is true for your business. I think this is true for you personally and professionally as well.
What do you say to the person at home who we've kind of been highlighting a bunch of times on this show? They're on the hamster wheel. They feel like they're in survival mode 24/7. They are behind on bills, and they're like, that would be nice if I had a moment just to sit and really ask myself what I want, but I don't have the time to do that.
Yeah.
I got mouths to feed, or I am behind on a car bill or rent or whatever it might be. What would you say to that person who's just trying to build something beautiful to share with the world?
Yep.
And they can't see outside their little box because they're struggling.
Yep. Yeah. So, first of all, note how naturally that story rolls off your tongue, right? Because it's familiar, right? It's very familiar and very relatable to many of us, myself included, in different seasons of our lives. And if you knew how many human beings on the face of this earth can relate to your story, it would encourage you. It'd probably bring some pretty powerful emotions your way, because it would remind you that you are not alone. And so to that person who's like, man, I don't have the time for this, I would say, listen, you're going to find yourself in different seasons, right? There's really a seasonality there's really a seasonality to our lives and to our work, and even to the literal calendar year here in Colorado Springs, where I love having all 4 seasons, right? And there are times to rest, and there are times where we are hustling. And so it's okay. I'm just going to tell you, do not go alone. Do not go alone. Don't go alone. You are not made to go alone, regardless of your worldview, right? I can show you tons of physical evidence, whether you believe this universe was intentionally created and designed, or whether you believe that it evolved through an amazing process. I can show you a rich body of evidence that says no single organism exists unto itself. It is all part of a broader ecosystem. You are not meant to go it alone. And so don't, because your story that you might feel like is keeping you isolated is actually one that can be shared and ultimately encouraged and supported through a rich community around you. And there's all kinds of, listen, if you don't want to hire a coach, that's fine, but I still want you to talk to somebody, a good friend, a good neighbor, someone that that goes to church, somebody that you fly your RC airplanes with, right? Have that conversation with somebody. It's going to encourage them, and it's going to encourage you as well. And if we help each other out, I believe that every human being has something to teach us. Every human being, regardless of their age or their role or the name or title or how they grew up or what country they live in, I believe every human being has something very unique to teach me that nobody else can teach me, right? You learn this. If you're a parent, you know what this feeling is, because you have these tiny, helpless children who somehow are teaching you really powerful things about yourself and your character. We all have something to offer each other. So I would just say, don't go it alone. Have a conversation. If you're into AI, don't hire a coach. Ask AI to pretend they're your coach. Talk to AI about what's going on. Mm-hmm. Start to get some answers. Then when you get those answers, don't keep them to yourself. Take them out to lunch with your friends next week and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this feedback? Help me process through this.
And
Do
if
you
you
know
don't have friends, ask the bartender or someone.
There you go. Yeah. Ask JB. Ask the Cost Business podcast. Yeah. Right. I would say don't go it alone. I think that's such an important part of our own growth and development. And your human experience and your professional experience is going to be so much richer. You do not need to go it alone, regardless of what you're dealing with. I don't want you to go it alone.
It's beautifully put, friend.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Your inner circle, your closest knit inner circle could be a couple people. You mentioned, I think your father is like your board of directors. How many other people are in that super close knit inner circle of yours?
Great question. So, depending on your view of like personality types, I'm one of the guys who I am truthfully, I'm a little slow to trust. So I keep a really tight, very small group. And that's probably one of the reasons that I'm a terrible socialite and I'm not very good at my networking events.
Yeah.
because I keep that group, I keep that group really tight. So I have, my family are great. There are a handful of professionals, some of whom I've mentioned today, who have permission to speak into my life. And then I'm really fortunate. I've got a group of friends who we've been getting together every Thursday for some of us since I was a freshman in high school depending, because sometimes you have, how people move and you got friends that move in and out of, but over 25 years.
Wow.
Right. And these include some people who are part of our community, who are business owners, who've held a number of different roles. But when you choose to experience life over an extended period of time with other human beings, it forms a really powerful bond. This is part of what healthy families do for us, right? I mean, you're pressed together and you end up going through these experiences and it forms these really unique and humbling bonds. And so that ends up being, my inner circle. So my support system is like, I only wish that more people could experience what I've had the privilege of experiencing for 25 years with, been in each other's weddings. When I married my wife, I'm like, babe, so here's the thing. Thursday nights are off. Like I got a thing. I've been doing it for years. I got to keep doing this thing, And of course she gets her girls' night as well, as was kind of the trade-off there as well, which is awesome. But that's part of that inner circle. Not everybody has permission to speak into your life. And so I would be careful there. If you're not, if you are one of these beautiful human beings that gives everyone around you the benefit of the doubt all the time and sees the hero in everybody, I'm going to encourage you just to pull in somebody in your trusted counsel who's got a little bit of a discernment, because not everybody has permission to speak into your life. I do think that you can look around and see, again, I like to use the word fruit. I'm talking about output. I'm talking about evidence. I'm talking about what do their relationships look like? What does their life look like? And I'm not talking about what they choose to show you on social media. I'm talking about in reality, which is why I love local business and local relationships and being face to face, right? Because I get a better picture of that body of evidence by doing that sort of thing. So not everybody has permission to speak into your life. Be thoughtful about who that is, and you're going to grow. You're going to grow tremendously. So
that's a great point, friend. I only have one final question. I'm not sure if you have any more left.
No, go ahead.
So just to kind of, I'm just going to pick one of those people for a second.
Okay.
Probably going to pick your dad because that's the first one that you mentioned. Okay. If you were to talk to your dad right now and just say how much he's meant to you over all those years of being a sounding board, that mentor for you, what would you say?
Yeah. I would say thank you, Dad. I would say thank you. I think, first of all, we've talked about so many scenarios that human beings experience, and you had the courage to let me see those and to be transparent. So I know, when my dad was burnt out at work. I know when he was spending the extra hours. I know when he took on risk to go back to school. and get his MBA, right? And saw him writing the papers after work. I know what that meant for our family. I know when he decided to go out and become his own business and start his own business, and the impact that it had on him and the family. And so fortunately, he was courageous enough to be transparent to say, hey, this is what the professional experience looks like. And he shared that with me. And so, Dad, I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for everything that I've learned. And, as a result, I just want you to know that I steward that forward to expand your legacy and the impact of all the other human beings that I have the privilege of working with and serving. To let them know that they are not alone, that it's okay to have questions, it's okay to get stuck, it's okay to redefine what success looks like. And if you are open to growing and to working hard and to asking difficult questions and to resting when you need to rest and pushing when you need to push, to celebrating, to having some fun and building great relationships, I think you can live a really rich, deeply meaningful, and successful life.
Love it, man. This is what the show is all about. People who've come from different perspectives, different corporate experiences, building startups from the very beginning to a $25 million year revenue, which is incredible. Thank you so much for JB spending the time with us. You already found your camera. This is your camera right here. Where can we find you?
Hey, thanks so much for being with us. I'm JB Bolton. If you need executive or business coaching, you can find me at boltonco.net. That's boltonco.net.
Nice. All right. Well, this has been the COS Business Podcast, and we'll see you guys on the next one.